Hello, loves. What a cool deal. Thank you, Heather Amber Pollock, for asking me to participate in this 20 questions thing for narrators. I really appreciate it. And it's really cool to be hanging out with you. So let's take a look at these questions. Number one, what inspired you to want to become a narrator? I've always been such a freaking blabbermouth. My friends, my family, they all encouraged me to please pursue a voiceover career and stop reading the billboards and the advertisements in the newspapers and magazines and stuff like that. I would just like read everything out loud. And I remember when I was a little kid, I was 8 years old. I even remember the street we were driving on when my brother told my mom that he had a friend who worked at a radio station. And just like that, I said to myself, oh, that's what I want to do. And so I pretty much knew always what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into radio. And so right out of high school, I got into radio. I spent about 25 years as a DJ and a production director and doing all sorts of different formats in different cities. And during that time, got into doing voiceovers for commercials and narrations and things like that. And audiobooks, of course, the logical step for me, because commercial copy, fun, not always written extremely well, not the most inspired copy to read, but then I come across audiobooks and these are well-crafted stories by authors who pour their heart and soul into this book. And so it's just such an honor to read an audiobook, and what could be funner than reading great stories out loud for other people to enjoy in a new way. So that's pretty much what inspired me to become a narrator, is that I've just always been a freaking blabbermouth. Number two, who inspired you to become a voice actor / narrator? Well, I definitely had some early influences. One, you wouldn't know his name unless you're like a voiceover nerd, but his name was Ernie Anderson. And he was the guy, if you're over 30, you've heard his voice. He was the guy who was like, tonight on the Love Boat, Gopher is in love with a stripper. I don't know, whatever the thing is name. Then he would go, then on a very special fantasy island. So he was a big inspiration. And then there was the movie trailer voice guy. His name was John LaFontaine, and he was the in a world, kind of a guy. And so they inspired me. I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to do voiceovers. So, I've emulated and admired a lot of people throughout my career, but those were the earliest ones. Number three, if you could have lunch with any person, alive or dead, who would it be? And that's a no-brainer. It's my dad. I lost him back in 2014. My dad was my best friend, and we every Sunday would talk on the phone and solve the problems of the world. And funny story about my dad. Well, so he hated to fly. He had this phobia about flying, and he only flew twice in his life, both times to come and see me, once in Phoenix, once in St. Louis. And he swore to me that he would never fly again. He would say, I'll take an Amtrak train, or I'll hitch a ride with somebody else, but I'm not gonna fly. Well, so one day I'm talking to him on the phone, and I say, so how's it going, Dad? And he goes, well, son, I met a girl. And I said, well, really? That's cool. So tell me about her. And he said, well, she lives in the Philippines. And long story short, my dad sells his business and moves to the Philippines, 18-hour flight included, and marries this woman who was just, he was so happy the last 3 years of his life married to her. Of course, my mom was pissed off because no, I'm just kidding. They had split up a long time ago. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I would do just about anything to spend just a little bit more time with my old man. Number four, how are you chosen for a role? That's pretty easy. I have several ways. So sometimes people will come to me from my website, troyduran.com. They'll hear my samples and say, okay, I think you would sound good on my book. There's also, I've been approached by some publishers who say, you fit this title, would you like to read that? And then there's just plain old networking. audio or books and novels, they're, it's a close knit community, and so one author will say, "Oh, I love the voice that you had for this book. Who is it?" And then they will approach me for their book, and so that's either way, it's really an honor because if when you think about it, an author pours their heart and soul into a book. And I mean, those are their words, and they've gone through such it's just such a labor of love. And so for them to trust you to bring their words to life in an audiobook is really, it's really a privilege. So I really feel lucky, and what a great business, great career to be doing audiobook narration. Okay, so excuse me. Do you have a recording routine? Kind of. I mean, I get up in the morning and head straight for the coffee, and then head downstairs and go through my email and kind of figure out what I have to do. And speaking of recording routine, it's the afternoon that I'm recording this right now, but so usually my voice is much better in the morning. So I try to get most of my recording done, especially like my audiobook stuff, in the morning when my voice is a little more fresh. But yeah, typically I just kind of like, I treat it like a business. I get dressed and come downstairs because recording naked is, sounds fun, but, the patterns that the chair makes on your butt is just not sexy. And no, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, when you work for yourself at home, and this goes for any profession, you need to kind of treat it like a job. You have to get up and you take your shower and you don't watch TV, and you give yourself like things that you do during the day, because you have to kind of like, you have to be self-disciplined in order to make money. Judge Judy is sitting up there waiting for you all the time. She's the Antichrist, in tempting you to ignore your duties. She's a pretty cool judge. But anyway, so that's my routine for what it is. Number 6, do you research accents for a role? And I do. I do it in several different ways. Sometimes I'll have an accent that I have in mind, and I kind of want to get some help modeling, and so I'll find somebody on YouTube, maybe an actor in a scene or a movie or something like that, and I'll listen to their accent, and I'll read along with my book to make sure that I'm like saying the things in the right way, the right cadence, the right emphasis on the words, and things like that. So there's that. I have go-to accents for my like if I have a Hispanic accent. Well, I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm Hispanic, and so I have a pretty good idea of like different kinds of Hispanic accents, whether it's like a Southwestern Spanish accent, or if it's a Mexican accent, or Puerto Rican accent. Same thing for like, dialects. Southern dialects are different. There's Texas dialect is different than Georgia. And so, I'll do some research on that via YouTube. Sometimes, like I had a role that I was practicing for. The character was from Paris, France, and I knew that the dialect was different in Paris as it would be in, say, the rural area of France, and so I hired a dialect coach, and we spent several sessions working on that particular accent that I brought to that. So yeah, I do some research for accents. How do you prepare for a dramatic scene? Well, I do and I don't. I'll read the book straight through, and that gives me an idea of who the characters are, what their personalities are like, where they're from, what kind of accent they might have, and things like that. But once I finish reading that book, and I make some notes and stuff like that, but once I finish reading the book and I start narrating, I'll give it a week. I'll read it, I'll take a week off, and then when I start recording it, I try to do it with fresh eyes, because what I'd like to do is experience that book along with the listener. So I'm kind of like, I'm going along with it at the same time. And so that's the way that I prepare for a book. When I come to a dramatic scene, so a lot of times this dramatic scene, I like it to catch me the same way that it catches the listener, right? Well, sometimes, dramatic scenes involve, they're very, very heart wrenching, and I can get, I don't know, I get choked up as well, along with hopefully the listener will go along with the emotion, and sometimes it's you don't want a blubbering narrator. So if I get too emotional, then I have to stop, go back, and start again, and kind of, read it so that it has effect, and it's like, not me sitting next to you crying along with the scene. So where do you typically record your narration is question number 8. And this is pretty much it. The studio, let me show you around. I can't flip this camera for whatever reason, but I'm gonna show you what I have. This is my studio, and it's kind of this is a new studio for me. I just moved here a couple of months ago, so I'm still working on all the sound treatment and stuff like that. But so far it sounds pretty good. This is my equipment. I've got all my processing down here. The monitors are up here, of course. There I am on Facebook. Total. This is research for my audiobook. No, I'm just kidding. I spend way too much time on Facebook. But so these are my 2 microphones. I use 2 microphones for 2 different things. Like there's my female microphone. This is my male microphone. So it'd be like, I love you, John. I love you too, Mary. But what about Susan? Susan is my sister. But I saw you in bed. With her boyfriend. Oh my God, not with... Yes, Nigel. Hello, Moppet. I've never read a book like that, but if that inspires any authors watching, then go for it. You can have it with my blessing, absolutely free, no royalties or anything. I'm an idiot. Anyway, so where are we? Have you ever been recording a scene and messed up to the point where you had to stop or start over? All the time. I mean, I'm always reading something, and I'll read through it, and then I'll say, "Oh, that's bullshit. He wouldn't have growled that out. He would have yelled it, or she wouldn't have said it like that. She was much happier than that, or whatever. So I will go back and I'll re-record the scenes so that so it makes more sense and flows along with the book. But yeah, I mess up all the time. Matter of fact, I was actually working on, I strung together some outtakes as I was preparing for this, and I started to put them together just so that I could hear how ridiculous I sound. Here's one of them. Boo boo bee bum ba bing bum bum bam The Jewish nation needed more than remedial attention to minor problems. It needed to start afresh before God. Oh, for fuck's sake! Yeah, so I guess that's all I'm going to play. If you want me to, I'll record that and I can upload it. And if you want to hear the rest of the outtakes. But yeah, I'm a total professional. Never screw up. Okay, so do you make special marks on the books beforehand? And if so, how? I do. So I usually download the book to my Kindle reader, and I'll highlight words that I think I'm going to need to double check the pronunciation on, and I like if I have a character that I want to kind of research and go through, then I mark them so that I can like get to them quickly and read them over again, and stuff like that. So yeah, I do that, and it's nice to be able to like go from one to the other, and sometimes I'll actually take the dialogue and do like links to a YouTube with an accent that fits what my character is saying, so that I can kind of reference that and go back. Or sometimes I'll like record what I think the character is supposed to sound like, and then I go back to that character. I'll just go back to that audio file and listen to it again, just to make sure that I'm keeping the character consistent through the entire book. Number 11, do you drink while narrating? I mentioned before that I'm a professional and I don't drink. This is medicinal. I have to do this sometimes like if I get hoarse or something like that, it clears, helps clear things, helps me relax. Actually, that is true. Like if I'm feeling hoarse, drink a little whiskey. It helps relax your vocal cords. But yeah, it is kind of fun to be able to drink while you're working. I'm not driving, so. Okay, so how many times do you need to read a chapter to say I'm okay to do it? And how many times do you need to read a sex steamy scene? So how many times do you read a chapter? Like I said, I read through the book once, and then I try to read through the chapter that that one time, so that it stays fresh. Of course, I'll re-record lines and phrases and scenes and stuff like that within the chapter. But for the sexy steamy scenes, I just read it once, because you don't rehearse sex, right? I go through that and kind of experience it right along with you. Okay, does it get interesting when narrating a hot sex scene? Yes, sometimes it does. And sometimes it gives me inspiration. Shout out, by the way, to J.A. Huss for writing a specific scene in Rook and Ronan where Rook grabs a bowl of cherries, and totally worth the cherry stains on the sheets. And so let's move on. But anyway, yeah, great scene. Okay, so chapter 4 or number. I'm not flustered at all. Okay, so number 14. How long does it typically take to produce an audiobook? I didn't know there was going to be math. It usually takes me about 2 hours to record what will end up being an hour's worth of finished audio, and then I've got my editing, so that'll take a couple of hours as well. So probably about like 4 hours per finished hour, which means if you're reading a 10-hour book, or if you're listening to a 10-hour book, then that's probably about 45 hours worth of production that went into reading the book, or into everything from reading it to editing it down and getting it mastered. Number 15. Do you have go-to character voices, or do you base them on the character descriptions in the book? Yeah. So I do have some go-to character voices, and then there's also voices that I go by the description. And sometimes, for one book, I was reading through this book and picturing, and you probably do the same thing when you're reading a book. You start to kind of cast the characters in that book, like you'd say, "Oh yeah, I would have Julia Roberts do that, do that character, and for this character, I would do Sam Elliott or whatever, right?" Well, so for one book, I was reading. This guy's walking across the country, and it's like I kept picturing Gary Sinise in my mind as this guy is going through this book. And so I kind of adopted his mannerisms, or at least my own interpretation of his mannerisms and the way that he talks in a real understated kind of a way, but still dramatic, for that particular character. And so so there's some go-to characters that come from me. And then there's other ones that I just kind of model after who I can imagine playing the part in that book. I hope that answers the question. Do you do all your own proofing, editing, and mastering? I do most of it. So what I do is I'll read it, and then I go back through, and every time I screw up or do something, like I decide, I think I need to read that line differently, I'll drop a marker in the recording, and then I go back and I fix the mistake, and so I do that editing, and then I go back and I listen to it to make sure I didn't miss any edits, and that it flows well and stuff like that. But then there's always some stuff like microscopic edits, like mouth noises, chair squeaks, breaths that don't belong, and so I send it to a professional editor, and they take care of those little tiny micro edits for me. Okay, so how many edits do you go through? Oh, man, a ton. So for like, I would say like 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes of audio will probably have 100 to 150 edits, which is a lot. I mean, it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but I've gotten pretty good at doing those edits quickly over the years. So, 18. Who is your favorite character? You can only pick one, and why? Okay, so I'm going to cheat just a little bit. So I do have a favorite character, but I also have a most challenging character. So I had this one character who was born in Mumbai. He was raised the first half of his life in China, and then the second half of his adulthood in Great Britain. And so what I was trying to do was like, okay, if you were a kid in India, and then you moved to China and learned Szechuan, and then moved to Great Britain, you would pick up a British accent. So that was like the most challenging, to incorporate all of those elements in this kind of international character. So that was really challenging. But there was another character that I had a lot of fun with, just because he was just such a goob, kind of a interesting character. And I pulled up the chapter in my audio player, and let me play him for you. I was only going to win by losing, because I was dealing with a madman. This is just the narration. The character's coming up. All right. So, evidently I'm asking the wrong questions. How about, what is this place called? The little guy winked at me.
What do you think this place is called?
I snapped. Seriously? I shouted. Who are you?
I am Pogo. I can help you on your journey if you like,
he said. Then all right, so that's Pogo, and I modeled him. I have animals, and I give my animals like their own voices, and I work from home, so I talk to them, they talk back. We have all sorts of great discussions. But anyway, so I have a corgi, and he's like a little Welsh corgi, and he thinks he is the king of the world. He thinks he owns this house and everybody in it, and so that's kind of like, that was my adaptation of his voice for this character from this book called Hell's Gift, which is really a good book by K.S. Hagewood. And she wrote the story about this fallen angel who goes to hell and has to fight through the 7 sides of hell in order to find his one true love. And a really, really great story. So that was one of the characters from that book. Okay. Question number 19. What do you do to celebrate after you finish a book and or series? And there's one. So after I finish, I have myself a nice glass of whiskey. And then, but there's a whole process involved in finishing a book. You have to upload your chapters, and then one good feeling is when you click done. There's a little button that says I'm done, and that feels good to do because it's a long process. And then after the author goes through and approves, then it goes through Audible's QC, quality control, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, they will send me emails saying, hey, your book is headed to retail. Congratulations. That's a great feeling. And so what I do is I take my girlfriend out to dinner. We have a nice steak dinner to celebrate finishing the book. So that's what I do. Final question number 20. Do you listen to audios? And if you do, which are your favorite books? Well, I don't get a chance to listen to very many audios because I spend a lot of time reading audiobooks. And so that takes away from my time. But every now and then, like when I hit the road, I like to read audiobooks and or listen to audiobooks. And one of my favorites was Red Dragon. And that's one of the books in the Clarice Starling, Hannibal Lecter series. And this narrator, I wish I would have done my homework and gotten his name, but he did such a great job of putting you right there in the scene. You felt like you were there, and it was such a creepy book, but really great job narrating. And then Lord of the Rings. I mean, how can you not love the incredible voice acting that went into narrating those books? So anyway, that's the 20 questions, and I really appreciate the time that you've given me to tell you about a little bit about myself. If you have any questions, I troll Audio Loves quite a bit. So if you want to tag me in a post, ask me anything you want. I'm happy to do that. You can find me on my Facebook page, which is Troy Duran Narrator, I think, and then troyduran.com/narrate is my audiobook page. So anyway, I look forward to hanging out some more, finding out more about other narrators and the latest audiobooks that are out and stuff like that. Thanks a lot. Take care.